Hey guys, as you guys know, we're working on Unit 2 this week. You should have already done your vocabs and turned it in yesterday. If you haven't, make sure you get that done. So we're going to start with question number 1. Question number 1 says, which equation defines a linear function? Okay. And question number 1, understanding linear function, is on lesson 8 in your book. It says, which equation defines a linear function? We all know that the equation for a linear function is y equals mx plus b, where the m is the slope or rate of change, and the b is our y-intercept or initial value. Okay? So for a linear function, it has to be in this equation or y equals mx. Remember, if it's just y equals mx, we assume that the b is a 0. Okay? So that is the equation for a linear function. And so this slope right here could be a fraction, it can be a whole number, but it cannot be an exponent. All right? And this b, our y-intercept, can be positive or negative. Okay? So if you see a positive number and a negative number, it's still in the form of this equation. All right, so let's look at our answer choices. Answer choice number A says y equals 2 over 4x plus 12. So this is in the equation form because 2 over 4 is 1 over 2, which is just a fraction. Okay, so y equals 1 over 2x plus 12 is in our equation form. This 1 over 2 is our slope slash initial value, rate of change. So, and this 12 is our y-intercept slash initial value. All right. So our answer for question number 1 is going to be A. Okay, so let's look at B. Why is B not true? B is not true because that x squared. All right, that x squared, we don't have exponents there's no exponents in this equation. C is not true again because of that exponent. All right, and the same thing for D. Those exponents mess that B, C, and D up. All right. Number 2 says point A is plotted on the coordinate plane below. Determine the location of point D given the following criteria. Point D has integer coordinates. All that's saying is that the x and y value are whole numbers. And the graph of line AD is not a function. All right. So for number 2, we're working with graphs of linear function. It says write the coordinates for the point shown below by an open circle that could represent point D. So what they're looking for you to deduce from this question is they want you to use the vertical line test to get that other point. Okay, because they say the graph of line AD is not a function. The way we test to see if something is not a function is we draw a vertical line. If we can draw a vertical line to that point, if you hit more than one point, you know that graph is not a function. Okay, so point D so we're looking at point A. If I draw a vertical line through this, I'm going to hit 2 points, this and this. Okay? Now, the reason why it's not going to be this is because it said point D has integer coordinates. And you see how this is not exactly on this line, so we don't know. It's going to be point something. So it's not going to be this, which means it's going to be this. All right? And the x and y coordinate for this is -1, -2, and then -1, -2, -3. So the x and y coordinate is going to be -2, -3. Okay, but what I want you to get out of this question is that for a graph to be a function, it has to pass the vertical line test. And the vertical line test says if you draw a vertical line through any point on the graph, if you hit more than one point, it's not a function. All right? And this is going to be on lesson 10, graphs of linear functions, if you have any more questions with that. Question number 3 says, select 3 linear functions below that have the same rate of change as one another. All right, so we're dealing with rate of change now. Remember, rate of change is the same thing as slope. And Remember, our slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right. And the rate of change formula is the change in y over the change in x. So change in y over the change in x. Okay? So you can do this two ways. You can say the change in y over the change in x or you can use your slope formula. I'm going to go ahead and do both ways. Let me start with the change in y over the change in x. So my y is negative 21. So I'm going to do negative 21 minus negative 9, and that gives me negative 12. That gives me negative 12. And my change in x is my negative 2 minus 6, and that gives me negative 8. When I simplify this further, I'm going to get 3 over 2 because 4 goes into both of them. 4 divided by negative 12 would be negative 3. And then 4 divided by negative 8 is going to be negative 2. And negative 3 divided by negative 2 is the same thing as 3 over 2. So my rate of change is 3 over 2. You're going to see that if we use our slope formula, we're going to get 3 over 2 also. All right? So using my slope formula, I'm using this first 2 points. So I'm going to have negative 2, negative 21, 6, negative 9. Okay? Remember, when you're using the slope formula, you write out your ordered pair, x and y, and then you label it. This is my first x, this is my first y. This is my second x, this is my second y, and then we're going to plug it into that formula. So y2 is negative 9, y1 is negative 21, x2 is 6, x1 is negative 2. Okay? So negative 9, so I'm going to keep, flip, change. So that is saying negative 9 plus 21 that's going to give me 12. And then keep, flip, change. And then 6 plus 2 is 8. And then 12 over 8, when I simplify that further, I'm going to get 3 over 2 because 4 goes into both of them. So you see how our rate of change, our slope is the same thing as our rate of change. All right, so it doesn't matter when you have something like that and they're asking you for the slope or the rate of change. It doesn't matter which way you do it. All right, question B says 2y minus 3x equals 1. Now, remember, our equation form for a linear function is y equals mx plus b. So if it's not already in the form of y equals mx plus b, you have to rewrite it in that way. Okay? And for you to rewrite it in that way, all you have to do is make sure you get your y alone. All right, so we're trying to get this y alone. There's two things with this y on this left side. We have this, and we have this too. Okay? I'm going to get rid of this minus 3x first by adding 3x. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So I have 2y equals 3x plus 1. And then I'm trying to get this y alone, so I have to get rid of this 2. For me to get rid of this 2, I'm going to divide by 2. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So I'm going to get y equals 3 over 2x plus 1 over 2. And remember that m is my slope or rate of change. So my rate of change slash slope is 3 over 2. Okay? Which is what the first one is. So far we know that A and B have the same rate of change. And we're looking at C now. So with C, I'm just going to use the change in y over the change in x. Change in y, change in x. All right, so that would be negative 7 minus negative 4, which is negative 3. And then negative 13 minus negative 9, which is negative 4. See how our slope right here is 3 over 4? It's not 3 over 2. So we know that C is not one of the three. And then D, y equals 3 over 2x. Now, remember we said if there's no b, we assume that the b is 0. So this equation is a linear function, and we know that this is going to be our slope or rate of change, which is 3 over 2, which is the same thing as this and the same thing as this. So we know that D is correct also. And to E, for you to find your slope or your rate of change from a graph, there's two ways you can also do it. You can find 2 points that you know for sure the x and y coordinate of it. So this I know for sure, and this I know for sure. And then you can write it out. So this is 0, -2. This is 3, 0. All right, and then we're gonna label it my first x, my first y, my second x, my second y, and then we're gonna plug it into our formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So my y2 is 0, my y1 is -2, my x2 is 3, my x1 is 0. So I'm gonna keep flip change, so that'll give me 2 over 3 minus 0, keep flip change. 0 and -0 is the same thing, so that's going to give me 3. So this is 2 over 3, not 3 over 2. So that means our answer for this is A, B, and D. All right. Moving on to question number 4. This is lesson 7, comparing functions. If you have any more questions about that. All right, question number 4 says, consider the 3 linear functions below. So we're talking about this, this, and this. All right, compare the rate of change for the 3 linear functions. So we gotta find the rate of change. So change in y over change in x. My change in y is 16 minus 1, which is 15. My change in x is -3 minus 0, keep flip change, which is going to be -3. Okay, and 15 divided by -3 is -5. So my rate of change here is going to be -5. For this, I need to rewrite it in the form of y equals mx plus b before I can figure out what my m is. So I got to get this y alone. Okay, so I'm going to add 2x. So I have -y equals 2x plus 10. Then I need to divide by -1, because since this is a -1y. So I'm going to get y equals -2x minus 10. So my m is -2. So my rate of change / slope is -2 for that second one. Then I'm doing the same thing for this one. Remember, when you're trying to find the rate of change / slope on a graph, there's 2 ways you can do it. I showed you the first way on the last question. I'm going to show you the second way right now. Now, the second way is you find your y-intercept first. Remember, your y-intercept is where your line, your slope, meets the y-axis, where they connect. So my y-intercept is right here. My y-intercept is 4. And I know that my equation is y equals mx plus b. And the b is my y-intercept. So I already know what my y-intercept is. It's 4. So I'm just trying to find my slope. All right? So from your y-intercept, you're going to see what the rise over run is. Okay? So I know from here, let's say I'm going, let me choose this point right here. I know that the rise is going to be negative because I'm going down 1, 2, 3. And my run is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's going to be -3 over 4. So my equation for this graph is y equals -3 over 4x plus 4. So my slope or my y, my initial value is -3/4. All right. And so that's part A. Compare the rate of change for the three linear function. Which graph of which function have the steepest slope? So when they're asking you about the steepest slope, you're looking for the greatest number, the greatest absolute value of each rate of change. And absolute value means that the distance from 0. So the distance of -5 from 0 is 5. So the absolute value of -5 is 5. And this is -2. The distance of -2 from 0 is 2. The absolute value of -2 is 2. And this is -3/4. That's less than 1. So we know the absolute value of this is going to be less than 1, which means that this has the steepest slope because the slope is 5. Or the absolute value of its slope is 5. So our answer would be table 1 for this. All right, we're almost there. Last question. It says, while Jenny goes on vacation, she puts her 2 dogs in a kennel. She pays a flat fee of $20 per dog and then pays a certain amount of money each day for each dog. If she leaves the dogs for 5 days, the cost is $5.40. Okay? Write a linear function to model the relationship between the numbers of days, x, at the kernel and the total cost, y, for one dog. All right, so we know that our equation is y equals mx plus b, where b is our y-intercept, which is the same thing as our initial value. And reading this, she pays a flat fee of $20 per dog. So anytime you see a flat fee, that means your initial value. So my initial value is going to be 20. So now we just have to find our rate of change. Okay? So they give us our cost. They tell us our cost is $5.40. So that's what everything costs. Okay, so the total cost was $5.40. She was gone for 5 days. She has 2 dogs. So if you have 2 dogs, and the initial value for each is 20, so when you add them together, it's going to be 40. So we're saying $5.40 minus 40. So we're taking away the flat fee. And then she was gone for 5 days. So 540 minus 40 is 500. And 500 divided by 5 is 100. So the rate of change for each dog, since there's 2 dogs, I have to divide this 100 because that's the cost per day. I have to divide this 100 by 2. So the cost per day for each dog is going to be 50. And that 50 is our slope. So our equation is going to be y equals 50x plus 20. All right. Part C says, explain the meaning of the slope in the context of the problem. So in the context of this problem, that 50 represents the cost per day that she has to pay to house the dog while she's on vacation. So it would be the cost per day for each dog. Okay. Guys, make sure you take your time on this. If you have any questions about any of the problems on this video, message me, and I'll help you through it. Make sure you take this quiz seriously. If you didn't do well on the last quiz that we did 2 weeks ago before we went on spring break, you need to do well on this one to help push your grade back up. All right? Let me know if you have any questions.